So yeah, I'm mostly doing some social work, but I also have a background of agronomist, but it's very broad. So I've studied the production, um, the sorting and machinery equipment aspects, and also food processing aspects of the food value chain. And mostly my work now is the bridge between research and development, as I work with local actors, mostly farmers, to try to develop sustainable value chains. And so my work now focuses on intercropping throughout the project of IntercropVALUE. So what I'll try to explain to you today is the integration of intercropping in food value chains in European context. So I'll start by giving you a very short historical view of intercropping in Europe. So it's quite different from China. And then I'll give you a very short presentation on the benefits of intercropping for foods by the vision of farmers, French farmers specifically, so why they're interested by it. And then I'll talk to you about how we can make this a more common practice in Europe, mostly by fostering collaboration between actors. So that's the social aspects of my work. And then we'll try to finish on a positive note, as I'll explain to you the different barriers and limitations and difficulties to adopt this practice. I'll try to end with different opportunities and innovations that we have and that intercropping can foster. So, intercropping, a new or lost practice in Europe. So, intercropping used to be a very common practice before the pre-industrialized farming period, where we mostly had intercropping for pasture land. And we actually talked about intercropping in agricultural textbooks. So, it was a quite common practice, but mostly for European smallholder farmers, which makes sense because in pre-industrialized farming systems, European farmers were smallholders. We didn't have large scale farming, and everybody was growing plants, but also having livestock on their farm and being very independent and working together. But that changed. Since, let's say, after the war, so in the Second World War, we had a different vision of intercropping, but actually I think it might have started before, since European has a history of colonial agronomists in southern countries where intercropping was actually very used, but we didn't see it as a practice that could be useful or that was actually agriculture. We saw it mostly as what they call, I don't know how to use this, I'll try. Yeah. Apparently without any order or arrangement. So we saw it as a fuzzy, let's say, agriculture type. So we didn't take it, we took this practice for granted. And in agronomy textbook between the 1950s and 60s, we no longer talked about intercropping, mostly in English textbooks. So we didn't see it as a practice worth giving to students or educating students about it. And after the war in 1945, we led the Green Revolution. So I don't know if you're familiar with this. Okay. And I don't know if you've ever seen this type of picture as well. No?
Yes.
Yeah. So here in the picture on the top, you can see the land and the fields from geosatellite picture. And it's in the 1950s. And you see the plots are quite small. And this is the same area, but nowadays. And you see these are really large plots. So after the war, we decided to increase agriculture's productivity, to feed the world. And we introduced new types of technology and machinery with the use of tractors and agro-equipment So we needed the fields to be larger. So we implemented what we called in French the remembrement, and I think in English it's the land consolidation, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay.
When you say we, you mean?
In Europe, mostly.
European.
Yes, okay. European. I'm mostly talking about European and.
I thought perhaps specifically French. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we did it a lot. It was something very intensive in France, and this is actually a picture in the Tarn, so in the southwest of France. But it resembles all of France. Yeah. So mostly what we engaged in was high input agriculture with the use of machinery in large fields. And so European farmers have specialized in large-scale farming, using mostly cereal monocropping production, whereas maybe in southern countries it was more protein types of production. But nowadays we're coming back to it. We're coming back to intercropping because we see that there is some use in trying to have more sustainable practices. As we've seen that the Green Revolution led to high dependence on non-renewable resources. So efforts are being made at the farm level, but also at the political level to introduce new cropping systems to reduce inputs. So I've put some pictures here to show you some examples. So at the farm level, we have a larger crop rotation or crop sequence. We also see in the fields, but it's still very rare, but we see it. Some, for instance, agroforestry lines used with livestock. And we also have very popular French vineyards in France. So it's starting also to be more and more common to have cover crops between the lines of the vineyards. And so this is at the farm level, but also at the political level in Europe, we have the nitrate directive. I think you might know about this. Not yet.
Well, not in detail. I know the Dutch implementation, but what is the exact directive?
Yeah. So
I don't know.
So for Europe, there's an incentive to try to reduce nitrate leaching, and so it's a directive. So it means that each European country implements its own action plan for it. And so, for instance, in France, we try to limitate nitrate leaching by implementing cover crops, mostly. So that's a way of introducing intercropping into the systems. And there is also the CAP regulations, so the Common Agriculture Policy in Europe, which has subsidies for farmers mostly, and some of the subsidies are implemented according to the different climate and environmental measures that you implement on your farm. So intercropping could be incorporated into those measures, but today it's not something that is recognized in the Common Agricultural Policy. I think in Belgium it is, from what I understand from Eric Matisse' talk. But in France, for instance, we don't have specific subsidies because you're doing intercropping.
I have a question on that. Yeah. There is this concept of ecological focus areas.
Yeah.
And this is in the CAP, I think.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And there are many kinds of ecological focus areas possible on farm. It could be a hedgerow, it could be a flower strip. I think it's also recognized if you grow a legume, a pulse crop, that is considered ecological focus.
Yes, it is.
So I don't know whether a cereal legume intercrop would qualify as ecological focus area.
Yeah. The difficulty today is that farmers, when they have to make a declaration of what they're growing on their field, they cannot put two crops. They have to choose one. So when they're doing a wheat faba bean, for instance, intercropping, they have to either choose to declare that they're growing wheat or declare that they're growing faba bean. So usually they'll declare that they're growing faba bean because it's the legume and they'll get subsidies from it, which is good, except that sometimes what happens, they get someone from the authorities to go check if it's actually true. And in the field, if they see that there's not only faba bean, but there's wheat, then it's going to be, depending on the person that is next to you, they're going to understand or not. And I've met some farmers that actually had problems and issues. They had to reimburse the subsidy that they got because, yeah, so that's one problem. And also sometimes, a farmer is doing intercropping. They're sowing multiple crops, and actually they don't know what is going to emerge. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes not. And so, for instance, they declare that they've done a wheat lentil intercrop and the lentil doesn't grow, then yeah. So that's a difficulty. It's something that's not yet well recognized or known at the policy level. And yeah, that's something in the IntercropVALUE project that we have some people working on this. And so they're writing policy briefs to try to raise awareness in the political sphere. But yeah, and I think in Germany also another example is that when you're growing legumes in certain regions, you cannot grow it on the same plot for 5 years afterwards. So you have to wait 5 years to grow it. Yeah.
Which does that mean that basically, strictly taken, intercropping is illegal? No?
Stripping intercropping is illegal? Stripping. That's a good question.
Because you cannot declare it's intercropping.
Yeah. Well, strip intercropping isn't very common.
You said strictly.
Strictly taken, so.
Strictly intercropping. No, you cannot declare it. You can declare it if it's there's a category for only feed intercropping. So what we call métaille in French, which would when you have, for instance, alfalfa, clover, so only for feedlot. There's a specific category. It's recognized. But then when you're growing for food, so for instance, wheat with faba bean, wheat with pea, wheat lentil, then you have to choose one or the other. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't understand that.
Oh.
So yeah, we're coming back to it, but there are still issues that need to be addressed. So for today's lecture, I'd like to be sure that we're talking about the same thing. So I've made this slide to show you that I'll be talking mostly about food products, so food intercropping, which is mostly based on mixed cropping. As you see here are different illustrations to show you that, for instance, intercropping for food could be used on the field by doing alternating rows of different crops. So here a cereal, here a legume, here a cereal. Or you could sow it on the same row with the two crops. Here it's the same as the first one, except that the crops are sown at different densities, different depth. Yeah, thank you. Here again, it's the same as this one, but different depths. And here there's one that is sown in rows, and the other one is full field. And here it's the same, but at the same density. And here are some pictures, but we don't really see very well. This is a wheat lentil mixture that has been photographed after harvest and after sorting, the first cleaning process. And here is wheat and chickpea. So what I'm studying is mostly cereal legume intercropping, but we're trying to explore a bit more and be more innovative by including, for instance, brassicae and crucifers. And this leads to different food outlets, such as mostly what we eat in Europe, pasta, bread, a lot in France, and biscuits. So this is what I look at. So I won't be looking at the different intercropping for feed or yeah. So why do we take interest on intercropping? I'll be quite quick on this because I think you already know the different benefits of intercropping. But yeah, just we've seen from the different literature that it can be interesting in it can be a more productive way of producing in low input contexts. It's a way also to increase biodiversity in your agrosystems. You may have better recycling of nutrients by the complementary approach of your intercrop, better storage of carbon, better management for weed control, for instance. And this might be also new or another perspective on why intercropping is interesting, but you can actually, by doing intercropping, integrate more legumes into your cropping systems and so in your plate also. So it's a way to diversify the field, but also what you eat. And we've seen also that in cereal legume intercropping, we can improve the cereal grain quality in some cases, which is very interesting also when you're looking at food products. And what still needs to be discovered or actually proven is that it can also reduce environmental impacts such as the greenhouse gas emissions and pesticide transfer. And this is something that some researchers are working on the IntercropVALUE projects. So, okay, so this is what we know from the scientific data that you all read. But for farmers, they don't take time to read scientific publications. So here are some graphs to show you the different motivations and perception of intercropping for farmers. So this is in French. Sorry, I didn't have time to translate, but it's from what we call KICS. So it's a case study from the IntercropVALUE project, which mostly works with low input smallholder farmers in the southwest of France. So these are the farmers I work with. And the second graph is about the low input lentil producers in the northwest of France. And so we've asked them questions about what are your motivations to produce intercropping, why you're interested, which benefits do you think it provides. And what we can see, you probably don't understand because it's in French, but trust me.
No, I can't read it anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah, you need good eyes. So the first reason as of why farmers would like to use intercropping is for biotic regulation. So trying to reduce weeds and have better weed control or pests. This is what we find in both cases. And also, in my case, the farmers also talked about the complementarities between the species. So they really like the idea of having two species that actually help each other on the field. And also a very important thing is the input of nitrogen by the intercropping. So farmers usually use cereal legume intercrops by thinking that, yeah, the legume can bring nitrogen to the crop at the same time and also for the next crop after. So yeah, a way to reduce inputs. And also one last comment on this is that farmers usually, at least the ones I work with, they don't really care how many crops they sow at the same time. So some of them are only doing 2 crops specific intercropping, and some others are doing more, 4 or 5 or 6. But the idea behind this is that at least they will harvest one. So they think that by doing only monocropping, the risk of not harvesting the crop is higher than if they sow at least 2 or 3 or 4 crops, that at least they will harvest one. And it's a well, so they would rather grow different crops than the weeds. So they usually say, yeah, they prefer not to grow the weeds and grow some different crops. Okay, so this was to show you a bit of the different perceived elements by the farmers. Sorry. I think I missed one slide. Yeah, okay. So we've seen that there are very interesting benefits by intercropping, or at least we think there are, but it's still very little used today, or at least it's only used by pioneers farmers, so farmers that are smallholders, inorganic, that are very innovative, and we having difficulties to try to implement practice with more conventional farmers that don't take those kind of risks. But even from pioneers farmers, mostly it's very common to use, let's say, classic mixtures. So, for instance, wheat, faba bean, and wheat pea. And we don't see many exploration in other types of intercropping. So, for instance, here I've put some photos of the different intercrops that we've tried this year in the southwest of France with the farmers. So most of them, yeah, they tried wheat pea and wheat faba bean. Some of them tried lentil and wheat. Here we can't see very well, but this is chickpea and einkorn or spell. And here it's wheat and chickpea. Here it's wheat and clover, crimson clover that the farmer has grown for the to get the seed to then grow his next cover crop. Here it's sorghum with the clover. Here it's barley, lentil, and mustard. And here are very not common mixtures that we've tried. It's chia and mango bean. So I don't know if you're familiar with mango bean. It's like
it's mung bean.
Mung bean?
Mung. Yeah,
Okay.
we call it mung. Probably the same.
Okay. I'll take out the O in French.
Well, mango is also okay, I think.
Even better.
different region.
The
Different
mango,
name,
yeah.
yes.
But here it's a MUNGO in French, but okay, in English, so it's mung bean. And it's very similar to soybean. But what's interesting with this crop is that it requires less water, less irrigation during the growth. So the farmers are very interested with it, and they've tried it with chia and also millet, yes.
Millet,
Right. Which is a crop that is very interesting during water stress situations. So yeah. So this is to show you that there are very common mixtures that are being used, but also what we try to do is to explore a bit more and see, okay, can we be more creative, more innovative? Can we do mixtures that we cannot see in scientific publications today, but that could be useful for the farmer because of the different outlets, economic outlets it has, or because of the agronomic benefits it could bring. And also, yeah.
Are farmers willing to take the risk if it's not known? There's no scientific evidence that shows that it works.
Yeah, it depends which farmers. In my case, the context is a bit specific because we're working in a project where we engage the farmers and we let them say, okay, this is the time that you can be very creative and just let yourself go. And if you want to try something, then let's do it now, see if it works. But
they come up with this idea. Or
yeah,
okay.
They did. Yeah, we actually did a workshop with them where we did some brainstorming. We looked at the different context of their farm, their plot, and we worked together in thinking, okay, what could be interesting? So we did like a large brainstorming out of the box, and then we tried to reduce and choose the different intercrops that could be realistic by doing on the field with the different constraints that they have, regarding the plot, but also the equipments and so on. But for us, yeah, no, it's not It's not mixtures that are common or that farmers would try on their own. But some of them, yeah. But they're very creative and they're very experienced farmers also. They're confident with what they're doing. Yeah. Okay, and one last point also is that usually mixtures are rarely used with more than one cash crop and food crop. So this is also what we ask the farmers to think about the crops they want to mix together by thinking first about cash crops and not service plants specifically. Because then the complexity is higher if you mix together two crops that you need to harvest to then sell to a processor or to a consumer. Yeah, the complexity is a bit harder than just a service crop and just one cash crop. Okay, so once we thought about the different mixtures they could try, then we asked them to think about the different difficulties they would encounter by doing intercropping. So this is only the results for the farmers, but we actually asked the same for other stakeholders of the value chain, so processors, sorters, and consumers. But here I'm only showing you the results for the farmers. So in this illustration, what you can see is the different types of barriers, or at least the barriers that are encountered at different stages or steps of the value chain. So production stage, for instance, we found that there are 46 different barriers, mainly based on the complexity of sowing. So farmers often have a lot of questions on how to sow different intercrops, at which depth they have to sow the different crops, with which equipment, with which periods. Do they have to sow it simultaneously, or do they have to start by sowing one crop and then wait a few months to sow the other, and so on. They have also questions on varieties or cultivars. Often, yeah, they just take what seeds they have on their farm, and the cultivar question is quite difficult to know what is best suited for your intercrop. And then we have also harvesting questions. So when do we harvest? Which crop do I choose? Do I wait for the wheat to be ready to be harvested, or do I prefer to wait for the crimson cover? And they also encounter difficulties at the sorting stage and storage, mainly because depending on the intercrop that you are growing, you are not going to be able to sort it the same way. So if you're doing for instance, wheat lentil intercrop, it's going to be harder to sort than a linseed lentil intercrop. So they have to think about what type of equipment they need. Is it available on their farm? Is it suited for the intercrop? And do I know how to sort? So there's often a lack of, let's say, skill or knowledge on how to sort certain intercrops. And finally, they also encounter difficulties at marketing and consumption level because when they're growing lentil, it's usually interesting for them because they can sell it on a gluten-free market, maybe at higher price. But here, if they grow it with wheat, then you cannot sell it on a gluten-free market. So yeah, it's kind of difficult. You have to prioritize what you want. And because of the sorting steps previously, this could have an impact on the final price since you take more time, you have more use of resources, electric resources, and so on to use your machinery. So this could have an impact on the final cost. And also what they say often is that there's a lack of consumer awareness of the added value of the practice. So for instance, the farmers I work with, they sell on local markets, so they talk directly to the consumers. And when they say, yeah, they're doing intercropping, consumers are often saying, okay, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this happened to you, but usually when I talk to my family or my friends about intercropping, they don't know what it is. So you have to kind of explain to them. So imagine if you're a farmer at a local market where you see 100 consumers going back every day, and you have to repeat over and over again what is intercropping, why you're doing it. It's very time consuming and demands a lot of energy. And yeah, sometimes on Sunday mornings at 6 o'clock, it's kind of difficult to explain why you do things the way you do. So yeah, this is a big difficulty that they like to lever, or at least they would need help with. And also there is a big barrier here, but it's not only on concept for intercropping. So it's on the perception and the act of buying. So a common example that we have is for organic products. We have a lot of surveys, at least in France, that say that consumers are willing to buy products that are more sustainable from organic agriculture and so on. They say, yeah, we really want this on our plate, we want to buy this. But then when it comes to actually buying it in the store, well, there's a discrepancy. It's not really what you see. So yeah, we need to work on this, and it's maybe more at a policy level that we could try to find solutions to make sure that consumers are actually able to buy those kinds of products. So yeah, look, there are a lot of difficulties at different stages, but what I'd like to introduce first before going further, and this also depends on what you already know, but I wanted to show you a slide of the different steps of the value chain. I don't know if you are, it's a clear image for you of the different steps that you can find in the value chain or not? No? Maybe. More or less? Okay, let's see. So for you, what's the first step of the value chain? Yeah, production. So we have first seed producers, the seed making to be in order to produce on the land, the intercropping. Okay, so once you've sown your intercrop, what do you do?
Take a rest.
Take a rest. If you have time. No, it's usually so once it's grown, it's sown, and it has grown, and it's ready to be harvested. You harvest it.
Yes, of course.
And then what do you do once you have this wheat and lentil? You process it. You sort it. Yeah. So here you can either sort it first. You have two options. Either you try to separate 100% or 99.999% of the different crops that you have in your mixture. So here the wheat separated from the lentil, or here the wheat separated from the chickpea, and you have different samples that are mostly pure crops now. Or else you decide to sort less than 100%, and you have a bag with wheat and some chickpea, and wheat and some lentil with it left. I should probably have added two other bags with some lentil and some wheat and some chickpea and so on. Depends on what you want to sell. And here the next step is storage. So sometimes farmers, when they harvest, they don't have time to sort it right away, so they have to store it first. And this is also a problem for intercropping, because it's not the same if you have to store 3 bags or 2 or 1. So for instance, if you want to store the mixture right after harvest, then you only one bag. But if you want to sort, and then you have different bags for each crops, so you need more space. So you can either choose to store first and sort later, or sort first and store next. And after, you can process it. So you can either sell it as raw product, but you can also have added value by processing it. So making a biscuit, pasta, bread, for instance, or a new product. For instance, if you've not sorted your mixture 100%, so you have some wheat and broken chickpea grains in it, then you can make a new high protein bread, for instance. And then you sell it to you consumers. So this can be worldwide or in more local regions, local markets or local stores. Okay, so is this clear for you?
Sure.
Okay. What is missing? We are talking about the different steps, but we also need to look at who's doing what. Is the farmer producing, harvesting also, or is it a company? Is he doing the sorting, or is it a cooperative that is doing the sorting? Who's storing? Is it on the farm? Is it on the cooperative? Is it a company? And the same, who's processing? Is it the farmer? Or is it an agro industry? And who's selling? And so on. So you each have all the time to ask the question, okay, who is doing what? So this is what I'm trying to show on this picture. You can either have a single farmer, or you have a lot of farmers, or you have a large-scale farmer, a smallholder, and so on. And what I've tried to show, but you can't see on this, there are links between the different actors. This is, for instance, a line between the farmers and the sellers or distributors. And the colors, so what I wanted to show you here is that depending on how many stakeholders you have in your value chain, then your value chain will either be characterized as a short value chain or a long value chain. So the definition for a short value chain is when there's maximum only one intermediary between the producer and the consumer. So this is the light green one. And a long value chain, by definition, is more than just one intermediary. So you could have a farmer, a cooperative, a logistic and transportation company, an agro-industry distributor, and the consumer. So it's not the same person for all this, and you have, you have a lot of intermediaries in long value chains, or at least more than one. Okay, is that clear enough? Yeah.
There are no supermarkets here.
I've represented the selling organization by the local markets. Yeah, but it could be a supermarket, a farmer's shop, and so on. Yeah.
And the cooperative could also be Limagrin.
Yeah. 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 Okay, so this is an ecosystem of the stakeholders, and what I'm trying also to show by the invisible lines is that they're interdependent stakeholders. Yeah, I should have chosen another color. It's the gray lines between all the stakeholders, but
it's our fault.
Yeah, I've seen it from the previous presentation, but I just didn't learn. Okay. So here is the illustration where previously I showed you the different difficulties that the farmers encountered at the different level of the value chain, and I've added a few new stages with the processing, for instance. The barriers that are encountered by the agro industries mostly is that for wheat flours that have broken legume peas in it after sorting and processing, it's difficult to make the product that they like because the legume will stain the flour. It will give it a brownish color, or even sometimes a little taste. And in agro industries, usually they have to have exactly the same product each time. So it's difficult if you have a variability in the flour that you have, that you buy from the farmers or the cooperative. It really needs to be the same quality, the same color, and yeah, because it makes it more complicated to them. And one of the difficulties that you probably can see, it's the know-hows and the processes. They have difficulties to adapt their know-hows and processes depending on the product that they buy. So yeah, it needs all to be standard and all the time the same thing. But this is mostly at the agro-industry level, whereas smallholder farmers that process on their farms, they usually don't say it's a barrier because they know their product from production until sorting and processing. So they really know the quality of the wheat, the quality of the flour, and they know, they kind of have an idea of what percentage of legume there is in their flour. So it's not really a problem. They can adapt easily. More easily at least than agro-industries. So yeah, and also one more difficulty that the farmers have identified is more cross-functional problem, so transversal problem. There's a lack of value chain network and collaboration. They usually say we have difficulties talking to cooperatives or talking to agro-industries and letting them know that we have problems on this aspect and so on, or that we'd like to explore more on this thing. They usually don't communicate very well. So there's this, and also there's a lack of sharing of risks taken. So to innovate, usually it's often the farmers that do it, at least in my case, in the southwest of France. And so they take a risk because when they're sowing intercropping, they never know if it's going to work or not, or how well it's going to work. And it's always them that take the risk to grow it. And the cooperatives or agro-industries don't have any compensation for the farmers if it has worked or not. So maybe we need to think about how to make the risk taken more even in the value chain as well. And what they've also told us, and we didn't take it personally, but they said there is too little research on this type of innovation, which is interesting actually, because when you ask them, okay, are you looking actually at the research that is being done by the publication, they usually tell you that no, which is normal. They don't have time to read all of this. But then again, what we think is that normally in France, the system has been created so the researchers create the knowledge, or at least verify some knowledge or new ideas that it works. And then we are supposed to pass it on to advisors and knowledge, development structures. But this is not, I think, maybe done enough. And also next, the advisor is supposed to then communicate it to the farmer. So I think we need better communication or better tools to communicate the knowledge that already exists on this. Okay, so a lot of barriers. What this illustration doesn't show is the different links that we have between the different problems. So one of our colleagues from the IntercropVALUE project has worked on a map, but you can see it. Okay, so all of the boxes that you see in orange, I think it's the farmers' difficulties, and normally between each problem there is a link, so an arrow to show the causal effects of one problem that is led by another. But I think you'll have access to the problem, so you would be able to look at it. But here in orange, you have all the barriers that impact the farmers. Here, I think it's the collectors, here the processors, and here are the consumer or policymakers in green. Have to check the color code, but yeah, the idea is to show that the problem that impacts the farmers also impacts the processors, for instance. And here is a more detailed example. So for instance, at the European level, we have some regulations that say that you cannot have more than 7% of impurities in your selling products. This means that if you have a wheat product, flour or grain, you cannot have more than 7% of broken peas or wheat grains in it. So you have to. So this causes a additional sorting step, because usually when you have intercrops, it's quite hard to make sure that you have 100% clean crop after the sorting step. Usually there are broken peas or broken lentils of your legumes in the wheat. So it's not an issue if you have less than 7%, but to obtain less than 7%, then you usually need a special tool that is called an optical sorter. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a sorter that will be able to put away the grains that don't have the size, the form, or the color that you want. So you have to set the machine, tell it that you need only green small grains to identify lentils, for instance, and it will sort it. But here with lentil, for instance, it's quite complicated because it usually is having a hard time to distinguish the lentil with the little rocks. So I don't know if you've ever bought lentil, but sometimes, yeah, you can lose a tooth by eating lentil because there are small, tiny rocks that the optical sorter, which is the highest top technology for sorting, cannot even see. So yeah, the European regulation asks to have low impurities in your product, so you need to sort very well. But farmers sometimes don't have the experience or don't have the machinery. So there is a risk of impurity in your crop, which also leads to risk of contamination of allergens. So if you're not able to sort correctly your wheat from your lentil, then it's a problem. You have to specify it on your packaging and your final product. And there's low value attributed to mixed products. So meaning today you will not find in the market wheat lentil mixture in package that you can take home and cook directly the wheat and the lentil. This does not exist, or at least it does, but it's recomposed, meaning that the farmer has harvested the wheat and the lentil. He has sorted perfectly both crops, and then the food processors has taken both of those samples and remixed together according to the proportion that he wants. So maybe we could cut some steps and go directly from harvest to, yeah. So yeah, lower value attributed to those mixed samples, and there's a lack of downstream stakeholders that promote intercropping because, yeah, for now they don't see any benefits for them. And moreover, there is a fear of financial loss or lack of profitability because we don't know if the market will actually be open for this type of products. You remember the story about the consumers willing to buy, but they actually don't maybe buy the product. So here it's an unknown, and which creates a fear of lack of profitability or financial loss. And so this leads also to additional labor costs if you want to have this type of products for the whole value chain, so for farmers but also processors and sorter companies or cooperatives. So you see how all this is linked and it goes in circle and on and on and on. So it's kind of difficult to know, okay, where do you have to start acting first? I don't know how much time I have left because I'm talking too much. Not much, okay. So maybe I'll go a bit faster, but the approach we want to take in order to tackle those barriers is to try to work with the actors, with all of the actors of the value chain, not only the farmers, but also to work with the processors and to make them sit down and say, okay, what does it take? What would it take for you to work with intercropping products? So what we believe is that we have to make changes at many levels of the value chain, but at the same time as well. We're not going to start only to work on farmers' barriers. We're going to start at the same time to work on farmers' barriers and processors' barriers. or else we think it's going to be really difficult to tackle them. And we need also to coordinate stakeholders. So as researchers, we are kind of in the middle of it because we're conducting the project, but the idea is that we take a step back and that we let the farmers and processors talk directly to each other. But we are here as a support to make kind of a safe space to exchange and facilitate the exchanges. And what I wanted to show you, because it's been really relevant in France, is this picture. But I don't think I'll have time. So if you're curious, you can just look at it, and I can tell you more about it during the break if you like. So yeah, I was going to ask you if you know any actors that could play a role in hindering the adoption of intercropping, because I'm talking about European context, but maybe in your countries it's a bit different.
It's also so largely consumer based, because you want to bake a cake, you want just a plain flour. Then every time the flour changes, your cake consistently changes.
Yeah.
And then also consumer plays a big role.
Yeah, definitely. They're not used to working with different types of products. Yeah.
I think a main key holder, you didn't mention so far, are the banks, because they have to finance the farmers if they have to change machinery or whatsoever. And when you come to the Netherlands, it's a real difficulty for banks to finance new ways of production.
Yeah.
Because they can only think in one way, it's their way, and they are not able to think in other ways.
Yeah, so on the investment of machinery, but also as well, what the farmers have told me is that so they pay insurance to cover climate damage, but then there's a checkup by the insurance to see that there's actually damage, and actually it's very related to the declaration of the crop. So if they've seen that you've done an intercropping, they say that you've taken the risks, so they're not going to cover it because you are the one that is responsible for this, for taking this risk. So actually, when farmers take insurance, they're not covered for mixtures. Yeah. So this is an access.
More or less same.
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep on going. What we are trying to look on the IntercropVALUE project are different pathways and trajectories to try to develop those intercrop value chains. So here's a nice pictures of the different pilots that are leading the case studies of the project. And mainly what they do is try to find the different incentives and opportunities for the stakeholders to adopt the practice at a bigger scale. So how do we make intercropping a more common practice? They try to also generate new knowledge and transfer this knowledge between the actors and foster collaboration. And what we are doing with other researchers, mostly in INRAE, but also Henrik Hogan Nielsen, that you might know from Denmark, is to look at what are the various innovation processes. So what are the actors actually doing on the field to move from a marginal practice to a more dominant system? And is it working? Is it successful, what they implement or not? So here I wanted to show you some theories that we are working on, but I don't think I'll have time. And if you've read the paper I suggested, then you might know what this is, the stages of behavioral change. What is interesting is that we think that it's not only binary decision of adopting intercropping or not. We think that there are people maybe in the middle hesitating. So different stages are, for instance, the people that are not even aware that this is a practice, so this is why they're not adopting it. Some are aware of the problems, but they don't take any action or don't know where to start first. Others, they are in preparation, so they're not implementing intercropping, but they're strongly thinking about it and thinking about the action plan. And then there are those that are actually implementing the practice, and those that are been implementing the practice for several years and are maintaining the practice on their field. So yeah, you can have a look at the publication I suggested. And what we want to look at are what are the different windows of opportunities to scale up. Sorry.
No problem. Does it mean that so 35% of the farmers in Sweden are at
both stages. They're taking action, so they've tried to implement it, and they are continuing to implement. They've regrouped because in their survey, I think there was not enough respondents for those two categories, so they've regrouped those categories. So yeah, it's 35% of the Swedish farmers that are in those two categories, 40% in these categories, and 25%. But also, this survey was only aimed for feed farms, so intercropping for feed, which is quite different for intercropping for food. Yeah. And yeah. So yeah, we're trying to see what are the different conditions to go from one step to the other to facilitate the adoption. Okay, so this is a bit of theory as well, but the idea is that the adoption at farm level depends on the knowledge also the farmer has on intercropping, the different values he has, so moral values, let's say, the motivation and the political and environmental constraints he encounters. So this is at the farm level, but we think also at the value chain level, the trajectories to adopt intercropping will depend strongly on the type of intercropping, so if you're food or feed, the actors that you have on your territory, their motivations, if they collaborated previously in the past before or not, so their maturity level, let's say, and the different ambitions they have and the shared vision that they also have in common. So for this, we've developed tools and methods to try to facilitate the exchange between the actors and to make it easier for them to seize the opportunity to work on this together, because usually when you put different types of actors around the table and you say, okay, this is our problem, fix it, it will just make a big mess, and it will be kind of hard to structure the ideas and to structure, okay, we are at this initial state, where do we go next? So we need to facilitate the exchanges. So we have this method that we call the causal tree participatory method, where first we identify the different problems and barriers that are either perceived or experienced by the actors. Then we trace back to the origins and the source of those barriers. So why you're having this problem, what is causing the difficulty that you're encountering. And then finally, we look at the different solutions to tackle those problems and who can also intervene. So this is a picture of what we've done in the southwest of France, where we had around 32 participants from the whole value chain. And they made these posters with post-its to identify the different barriers that they have and the solutions. I don't know if I'll have time to talk to you about the different.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think you've used an hour now.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You really need to wrap up.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, but I wanted to show you the different opportunities, but mainly they're based on the different case studies that we have in the project. So if you're interested to know more, you can go on the website and you'll find the stories. So yeah, and I'll stop now. So thank you.
You can give your conclusions.
Yeah,
But,
okay. I don't know, maybe I'll go directly on this. Yeah.
Because I think TJ is already in the.
No, he tried to log on, but was gone
Yeah.
immediately. So
Okay,
he just tested the link.
I'll take the blame, I'm sorry.
No worries.
So the key messages to take home, to be really synthetic, is that, your intercropping practice in Europe is still very basic mixture. So we're wondering, how do we make it a more common practice? And so we think that we can make it a more common practice by making the actors collaborate and talk to each other to tackle the different barriers simultaneously. And we've seen that there are many obstacles, and it's not only faced by, they're not individual obstacles, but they're very intertwined next to each other. But there are some solutions and some innovations that are taking place to try to tackle them. So you can find out more on the website. And also, I wanted to show you this picture, which represents kind of the knowledge transfer between different actors. So the researchers, which is I think where you are all almost. The advisors that are on the field with working with farmers, and even farmers between themselves also can exchange knowledge, and they often do it and we don't know about it. And this is often where there is the most interesting knowledge. So the idea also is to try to expand this and make sure that advisors know about it, researchers know about it, and also academics, so teachers and students. And so so we hope that in the future we'll have better collaboration also between those actors to make better knowledge transfer. So I hope during your PhD or work you'll think about this and try to improve the situation that we have today, and think how relevant your work is for the practitioners. I think it will also a really good motivation to see where you're going, because I think maybe when you are doing your PhD, sometimes you're overloaded with work or you don't really know where you're going. So I think it's a good way to remember, think about the practitioners to understand where you're going. But that's my final word. Thank you very much.
I think we can still have one or two questions, and the remainder of the questions during our break. Somebody wants to ask a question?
It's a technical question, or like how long is this project?
It's 4 years. It started in 2022, so it finishes in 2026 in October, November.
Most of the people are working on societal impact, or
it's a big part of the project, but no, there are other work packages that work also on field experiments, on station experiments. We have modeling as well, which is a big part of the project, and we have researchers also working on food processing mostly, but in laboratories, so not with the actors, but in,
Also, the field trials that Sabine showed are also part of the same project. So all these European and global field trials, same project.
And the idea is to try to inspire what we do with the actors, depending also on the research that is being done in the project. So, for instance, modeling could actually help maybe the farmers to better understand why it works or not. So, trying to make those links.
So I have a question. So one slide you show that 1/3 of Swedish farmers is already doing intercropping.
Yeah.
What are the intercropping?
It's mostly for feed, intercropping. So I don't know if it's detailed in the. Has anyone read the article I suggested? Maybe not.
I did not, but I saw in Sweden in the Högakkusten, I saw mixtures of oats and peat.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things they definitely do, and I see now in Wageningen also a mixture of oat and what was it, lupin?
Lupin, yeah.
I'm not sure whether that is for feed or they will separate it and make lupin burgers.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
I think
So I think things are definitely happening. So I'm not that pessimistic.
Yeah. And in Sweden also.